All right. Well, thank you all for your patience while we're trying to figure out some technical things here. And while we are getting started here, we got just a couple of quick announcements and a couple of quick policy reviews. And Yvette, I do see your box, so it looks like you got in. Yay! And I'll be introducing you in just a moment. So our announcements, just want to let you know the next Glad You Asked, we are going to be discussing material facts disclosure. Yeah, hey, good to see you. And so that's coming up, the next Glad You Asked on October 20th. So make sure you set your calendars. There's a lot of questions about requirements for disclosure when it comes to material facts. So we're going to have an in-depth discussion on the 20th. Also, for policies and procedures, I've got 4 quick ones we're going to review. They're literally 1 or 2 liners. And then we are going to get to our guest speaker of the day. We're so excited to talk about a very important subject. So before we do, I'm going to just share my screen here and cover these quick policy and procedures review. We try to keep it on track for every Glad You Asked. So if you can see my screen, somebody give me a thumbs up and let me know if you are able to see our policies and procedures form. Let me see. I don't see any thumbs yet. Hold on for a second. Let me see why. What is happening with my share screen? Oh, here we go. Can you see it now? Anyone?
It's coming. Now we can.
Coming. Okay, great. All right, good. So today we are going to briefly review 4 of our PMP. The 4 that are selected today, again, are short and sweet ones. Again, you just really need to be aware of these policies and procedures and where to find them when you need them. So we are going to talk briefly about number 22, the group and team policies and procedures. So there is a addendum to the policies and procedures from KWRI, Addendum K, that talks about how to operate in groups and teams within Keller Williams. And so if you're thinking about opening a group or having a team, then we definitely need you to refer to Addendum K for how to do it appropriately. It's highly suggested for all agents desiring to start a team or group to meet with the team leader and your coach before you move forward. So we just wanted to give you a refresher that there is a specific addendum specifically designed to help you with how to start your group or team. Okay. The next one we're going to review is number 33. So scrolling down here really quickly to policy number 33, property management. This one's more of just a quick reminder. KW Central does not do property management, and we are not a party of any property management agreement. So if you are managing property with a different company, we do have to be informed. So just make sure that you know that we have to know about your involvement with some other entity, but we do not do property management with KW Central. All right, number 35, record retention. I know that all of you are well versed on this one. You have to keep your records for how long? 3, very good, 3 years, right? And so for record retention, brokers must retain all transaction records for 3 years from the conclusion of the transaction. This includes service agreements, WWREA disclosure forms, transaction files, whether it closed or not, trust funds and account records, all advertising, all written communication, including text with parties to a transaction, whether that's clients, co-broker agents, or service providers. So all of these records you have to keep for every transaction for 3 years. So make sure that you're doing your part to make sure you're perfectly retaining your records in the event that you need them in the future. And finally, this last one is short and sweet, number 41, Sunshine Fund. So after the hurricane last week, we found that there is a need to make sure that we bring up that there are sometimes things that happen or needs that need to be met. And we have a Sunshine Committee and a Sunshine Fund. So please see the attached local Sunshine Committee policies and consider joining the Sunshine Committee to shine a little light in our agents that are having a tough time. And so just wanted to let you know that that is available. There's a Sunshine Committee and a Sunshine Fund. All right. And so that is the end of the PNP review for this portion of Glad You Asked. And now I am so excited to welcome Miss Yvette Chuang. She has come to discuss mental health with us. And Yvette, we're just so happy that you're here, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I am excited to talk about mental health, and I have a PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully I can figure out how to share my screen to make this happen. Share screen. Here we go. All right. Oh, yay. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let me see here. Slideshow from beginning. Here we go. All right. Like I said, my name is Yvette Chuang. I am a adult gerontology nurse practitioner. I work in primary care. So, and thank you for having me to talk about mental health. And hopefully, you know, this is my mental health perspective from a primary care perspective. So, all righty. There we go. So what is mental health? Mental health is our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. That's the official definition. It affects how we feel, think, act, and it helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. The way I see it is it's really about how we're feeling, what our mindset is, really about our perspective of our own health and our life situation, our work, things like that. Mental health across the lifespan. So mental health is important at every stage from childhood through adulthood, and it can change over time depending on many factors. When the demands exceed our resources and coping abilities, our mental health could be impacted. So here we're talking about, again, our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So if you think about the lifespan, like when we're kids or adolescents, you know, what are the things that are important to us? It's like school, making friends, developing social skills, especially as teenagers, being accepted by peers, that kind of thing. And then when we go into like young adulthood, we're thinking about work, career, maybe buying a house, right? Or getting married or starting a family or something like that. And we get in middle adulthood, we're thinking about like balancing aging parents and maybe having some kids that are adolescent heading off to college or something like that while we're still working, juggling new things. Meanwhile, our own health, we might have like new diagnoses, chronic health conditions, might end up with high blood pressure or diabetes or something like that. As an older adult, we're thinking about retirement, maybe downsizing our home because, you know, our kids are gone and they've started their own families or whatever. And then, you know, also like chronic health issues that may have lingered on for the last 10, 15 or 20 years, and how that thing, you know, that the health issues might take a toll on us. So there's some mental health myths and facts I'd like to just briefly go over, just to kind of like let people understand what's going on. So the first myth I came across was mental health problems don't affect me. And the truth is, it's very common. As you see here, it's 1 in 5 American adults experience a mental health issue. 1 in 6 young adults experienced major depressive episode, and 1 in 20 live with a serious mental health illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar, or major depression. So, and that's just in 2020. It's the latest data we have. So it's pretty common. And then here are some statistics. I actually have this already pulled up. So let me see if I can find this. There we go. So this is from NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I like this graphic because it shows you like how prevalent mental health problems are. Like I said, the 1 in 5 adults, 1 in 20 adults have a serious mental health illness. And then if you look at the picture here on the left, I guess in the center, has to do with what people have. A huge part of it has like anxiety disorder. That's huge. That's probably the most common I see, to be honest. Depression is another one I see pretty commonly as well.
Yvette, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. However, we can't see your graphic. We don't see your graphic. You may have to, if it opened up in another window, you may have to switch to that window.
Okay, let me see here.
Stop sharing this one and go to the new window.
Go to the new window. Oh, and
then share screen from there.
From here. And then go. Oh, I see. Interesting. Okay.
Technology, right?
I know. I've never done a Zoom.
There we go. We can now see your graphic. So
Okay,
to get back to your other one, you'll have to go through the same steps to stop sharing here and then reshare the other one.
Ah, perfect. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, so this is pretty cool. This is, like I said, from NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And it's saying you're not alone. You know, millions of people are affected by mental illness. 1 in 5 adults have some sort of mental illness. 1 in 20 has some serious mental illness. And then in the middle here, there's a graphic of the United States. And I love this picture because it just shows you how it breaks it down. It says 19% have anxiety disorders, which is by far the most common one. I do see a lot of depression in primary care as well. Anxiety, depression are the 2 big ones. And then there's little small percentages of other things. In truth, there's like over 200 mental illnesses. So you can't cover them all in one talk or even a week of talks. So, but this is just what it is. I like this graphic. It's pretty good. So I'm going to see if I can get back to my PowerPoint slides here. Here you go. All right. So then the next myths and facts we have is people with mental health problems are violent and unpredictable. So that's not true. The vast majority of people with mental health problems are no more likely to be violent than anyone else. Can you guys still see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, let me see. I might have done something wrong. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
All right, let's see. Share screen. Here we go. Share. Oh, it redid the whole thing. That's interesting. All right. Here we go. And current slide. There we go.
Yep.
Yes, perfect. All right. So people with mental health problems are not violent and unpredictable. So the vast majority of people with mental health problems are no more likely to be violent than anyone else. Only 3 to 5% of violent acts can be attributed to individuals living with a serious mental illness. And the fact that I learned that I thought was interesting was people with severe mental illnesses are over 10 times more likely to be victims of violent crimes than the general population. So they're if anything, they're like the victims of these violent things. So many people with mental health problems are highly active and productive members of our communities. And the last one I wanted to share with everyone is the myth is I can't do anything for a person with a mental health problem. Well, that's not true either. Family and friends can make a big difference. They can help someone if you recognize someone that has a mental health problem to get treatment. Because you can reach out to them, let them know that, hey, I'm here for you to help you, to be supportive of them. Sometimes folks who are in a crisis or have a mental health issue, even if they're not in a crisis, maybe they just don't know how to access the services that they need. Maybe they need some help doing that. Or another big one is just sharing facts about mental health, like the ones you're learning here today, especially if you hear something that's not true. There's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of stigma out there. We really need to like debunk all those. And treating people with respect. Like I said, the stigma, it's getting better, but it's still there. So, and, you know, and discouraging really poor language, I would say, calling people crazy or psycho or just derogatory terms. Just avoid using that. You know, use first person language. First person language meaning like recognizing the person first. So like if a person has diabetes, for instance, which doesn't have like the stigma behind it, you would say, hey, this is a person who has diabetes. This is my mother who has diabetes. You wouldn't say, oh, that's that diabetic person, right? So it's the same thing. If somebody has depression or anxiety, you don't call them out by, you don't call them first by that. You say, this is a person who has depression or the person who has anxiety. All right, and recovery is possible. So what is recovery exactly? So I think this is the other thing, like recovery is by definition, the process in which people are able to live, work, learn, and participate fully in their communities. So it's just, you know, people can live with anxiety, depression, diabetes, high blood pressure. It doesn't matter what it is. Honestly, in my eyes, it's just the matter of the fact that they are functioning, you know, that they're functioning on a day-to-day. And that is recovery, that you're able to function, you have a quality of life, and you're able to do the things you need to do. So next we'll talk about risk factors for developing a mental health problem. So there are a lot of risk factors, biological factors, genetics, chronic illness, brain chemistry, life experiences, trauma, history of abuse, family history of mental health problems. And as you look at these risk factors, you know, you think about it, a lot of these factors, none of us have control over. So, you know, again, the stigma just needs to go away about mental health problems, because it's not like folks had really much control, if any at all, over developing one. And then the other thing I do want to stress is that just because someone has a risk factor, it doesn't mean that they're going to develop it. It's just a risk factor. So early warning signs. So if you are maybe, you know, somebody you know, see somebody at work, client, whatever it might be, here are some warning signs to look out for. If someone is eating or sleeping too much or too little, having low or no energy, they're disengaging or self-isolation, they're pulling away, they're not engaging in what they may normally be engaging in. They may say, you know, they feel numb or like nothing matters. They may feel helpless or hopeless, and they might verbalize that. They might be forgetful. You might notice that. You might see that they're edgy, angry, upset, worried, scared. It's just like being emotionally labile, like the mood swings, you know. And then smoking, drinking, or using drugs more than usual. And they may have unexplained aches and pains. That one I always found very interesting because, you know, the mind and body work together. You really can't separate the two. So if you're having a problem, a mental health problem, it's going to manifest somewhere in your body. And I think one of the ways it does that is just having these aches and pains that you can't really like explain, like, where is it coming from? I mean, you know, what's the physiological basis of that? Other warning signs, early warning signs, is yelling or fighting with family and friends. Like I said, the severe mood swings, having persistent thoughts and memories you can't get out of your head, hearing voices or believing things that are not true, thinking of harming yourself or others, inability to perform daily tasks like taking care of kids or getting to work. In the list that I found of this, they called this an early warning sign, but honestly, these last few here on this slide, I feel like ideally, from a clinician's point of view, ideally, you would want to get help before it gets to this, before it escalates to this, where you're, having lots of fights with your family, or you're hearing voices and believing things that aren't true, right? Or you think about harming yourself. So honestly, like the couple few slides prior would be when I would be like, all right, time to do something about this. So how do we achieve positive mental health? Well, like I said, mind, body, they work together. You can't separate the two. So I started with the body, and let's get that all fixed up first, right? So eat a balanced diet, vegetables, lean protein, whole grains, non-fat, low-fat dairy, limit your salt, saturated fats, cholesterol, and added sugars. Make sure you stay hydrated, and limit caffeine and soda intake. Limit or avoid alcohol. So I get a lot of questions about this because the recommendations are less than 2 standard drinks for men and 1 standard drink for women per day. Personally, to me, that sounds like a lot. And what is a standard drink anyway, right? So I put a picture here that I got from the CDC of what they define a standard drink is, at least in the US. So fun fact, standard drinks are not the same across every country, apparently. So if you run into someone who is not from this country, they may look at you kind of funny. And then, of course, avoid tobacco products. Oh, and the thing about the standard drinks thing, or the alcohol limits, it's not talking about binge drinking. That's a whole nother subject. That's just like if somebody was having a drink every evening or something. All right. So next up is sleep hygiene. So I think it's most important to establish a routine if you can. If you work a job that you're not having to do days and then flip to nights or something. If you can go to bed about the same time every night. I usually recommend whatever time you decide, try to do plus or minus 1 hour at that time. Try not to deviate too much from that, because your sleep cycle gets really messed up. 7 hours of sleep a night. I know that we were taught 8 hours, but newer studies have shown 7 hours is actually enough for adults. It's different for teenagers and kids, of course. And no electronic devices before bed, which is extremely hard because it's, we're all in the era of iPhones and iPads and things like that. But the reason why they say that is because our electronic devices, as great as they are, they emit blue light, and the blue light suppresses the secretion of melatonin, which is what your brain secretes to tell you, hey, it's time to go to bed. So you're sitting in bed and you've got your phone out and it's emitting this blue light, and your brain can't emit this melatonin, and then you're just staying up longer. So next one is regular physical activity. So moderate exercise, 150 minutes per week. So like maybe 30 minutes, 5 times a week. That's what I tell my patients. At least, that's a goal, right? To work there. Exercise is really good obviously for your health, but it also releases endorphins, and that makes you in a better mood. Endorphins is like our body's natural high, to be honest. So so work your way up to 150 minutes a week. And if you need medical clearance, I definitely say go get that first. And what is moderate exercise? I get asked that as well. So like, let's say you go out walking. So moderate exercise would not be like you be able to easily carry a casual conversation with someone you're walking with. But it would be like, you get a little short of breath holding that conversation, but not completely out of breath. And I would say that's like moderate. Like I said, take breaks from the internet, social media. That's just more so during the day as well. One thing I'd like to say about that is reading the news. This is my personal rule. This is not like in some medical journal or anything, but I try to stick to no more than 30 minutes each day. Because I've noticed that if I read the news too much, it gives me anxiety, because it's all like doom and gloom, like this place, there's war here and the economy is going terrible. And, and by the time you're sitting there on your computer, on your phone, reading all this, you're like, oh God, I feel terrible. So I just try to limit it to 30 minutes a day and put it down. That's it, enough. And then make some time to unwind, try to do some activities you enjoy. Some folks like to listen to music. I know people like gardening. Some folks like yoga. Some people like volunteering, makes them feel good, and it's hard. It's hard to make time to unwind. So schedule in some time, even if it's the littlest bit you can get in. I mean, it's not like an everyday thing because we work and we have, kids and whatever, and got to do all this stuff, right? So it's really about like, okay, maybe I will take a Saturday afternoon, 2 hours or 1 hour, like just start small and go from there. And then enhance your coping skills and reduce stress. I find this to be very important. Just in personal relationships, professional relationships. So here are ways to help with that is mindfulness, breathing exercises, muscle relaxation, meditation, and journaling. Let's see here, mindfulness. So mindfulness is just, it's an activity. It's hard to explain, but it's an activity where you are present and fully aware of where you are and what you're doing at the moment. And it's important because our lives, we've got so many things going on. You're like, okay, I'm here in this talk, but gosh, I got to go pick up my kids afterward, or maybe I have to go see this client, or, your mind is everywhere. Mindfulness is great because it centers you. It brings you back and say, hey, I'm here and in the now. And it helps with appointments with clients, or, it helps with your kids. It helps with all sorts of things. And let's say that you have a stressful situation at work, and it helps you recognize the feelings that you're feeling at the moment. And you're able to be like, oh, I'm feeling like a little threatened, or a little anxious, or whatever it might be. And you're able to to calm yourself down because you're able to recognize, hey, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable right now. So I feel like that is so powerful in our personal lives and our professional lives. And as part of that, you can do breathing exercises too, and that helps calm down and relieve stress. So yeah, and meditation is, of course, just, I think meditation is what you make it to be. There is I have a hyperlink on here, but it's to the Mayo Clinic, and there's different types of meditation. It's not just like sitting like with your legs crossed and like, doing nothing. I actually do what's called like a walking meditation, where I get my exercise in and I meditate at the same times because, no time. So there's different ways that you can meditate, and you can actually like do two things at once and combine them. So, and it's kind of like mindfulness, but different. It like focuses your attention on something else so that you're not thinking about all the stresses that you have on you, on this long to-do list and, oh gosh, everything else in life. And then journaling, if you are, if you're stressed out about something, journaling is a great way to get those feelings out. And I think that's pretty obvious to most people. But what's really cool is some folks may not think about journaling as journaling the positive things about your day. So it's really nice if you like journaling to every day sit down and be like, what was the best thing about my day? And write that down every day. Because when you're feeling down in the dumps, you can pull that out and be like, look, I have like all these really cool things that I'm really happy and appreciative, and these great things have happened, right? So that's pretty neat. And reframing, that's huge. And this is about mindset. Like I said, just staying positive and practicing gratitude, just being like, hey, here are the best parts of my day. Hey, I'm glad I was able to get that walk in, or I was glad I was able to connect with that client that I was seeing. I was showing the house, to that kind of thing. So connecting with others, and talk with folks that you trust about how you're feeling when something's bothering you. And friends, family, and community-based, faith-based. I feel like we're human beings and we're social creatures and we're not meant to be in isolation. And the last couple of years have been very tough on all of us because of that, because that's not normal for us, you know? So, and of course, last but not least, seek professional help. And I get asked this a lot. A question I get asked is like, well, when do I seek professional help? I always say that's individualized. It depends on the person and when they feel like they need it or they're ready for it. But I will say this, the tendency is to wait, and for a variety of reasons. We've got life demands, fear, stigma, but I would say sooner is better. And I will tell you why in a second here. So seeking professional help, don't delay. Schedule an appointment with your primary care provider as soon as you can. The reason why is because your primary care provider, your PCP, is probably booked a month out. This is practical things at this point. Like you're not gonna, chances of you getting in like within the next week is pretty slim. Some of them are out a month, some of them are 6 weeks or even 2 months. So that's why I say just make that appointment. It's always easier to cancel an appointment than it is to get an appointment. So lock it in, right? So, and why your PCP, why your primary care provider? Because your primary care provider is your gateway person to getting help for any specialty. So that person, your PCP should be somebody that you get to know well. So that if you need a referral to a specialty, you can say, hey, I think I need a referral to psychiatry or to neurology or whatever, right? The other thing is, it's insurance based, and I know this all too well. Some insurances, some health insurances won't allow you to go straight to a specialist. You have to get a referral from a primary care. Some other ones will allow you to just go to the specialist, which is great, but you know, that's insurance based. So preparing for your visit to talk about your mental health concerns with your primary care. To prepare, I would say, make a list of questions and concerns. So these visits, these initial visits aren't going to be very long. So this is why a list is very helpful. And prioritize, because, you know, you may have like 10 things you want to talk to your PCP about, but what are the top 3? Because you hopefully can get through the top 3 in that visit. I don't think you'll be able to get through all 10. That's probably not realistic, just because of time constraints. And then bring a current list, medication list, including any herbals, vitamins, supplements, over-the-counter products you're taking. And then review your family mental health history if there is one, because like the family history plays a role. Do consider bringing a friend or a relative. They are great for moral support. They help you remember things, and they can even take some notes because it's going to go fast. The visit's going to go faster than you think. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't remember everything that was said to me. So they're really helpful. And be honest about your symptoms, severity, and your circumstances, because that helps your PCP like gauge what's going on and say, hey, I do think you need a referral to psychiatry or to whatever, you know, or they say, I think, you know, we can handle this here through primary care. It all depends on what the problem is. And ask questions. If, you know, when your PCP presents possible treatment plans and you don't understand, ask for sure. So I'd like to now kind of switch gears and talk very, very briefly about some common mental health problems. Again, these are things that you guys would probably most likely see at work with clients or at home, friends, or in the community. As we talked about, anxiety, as I said earlier, is super duper common. Depression is another one. I put grief and loss on here just because of the COVID pandemic that we've been through, and we've lost so many people. And suicide, because that's like the one big thing that we all should be prepared for. So, all righty. So generalized anxiety disorder. So GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, it's one type of anxiety disorder. there are other ones. There's like panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, phobia disorders, and there's many more that fall under the umbrella of anxiety disorders. But GAD is going to be the one that everybody's probably seen, experienced, at some point in their lives. So it usually involves a persistent feeling of anxiety or dread, which can interfere with daily life. It is not the same as occasionally worrying about things or experiencing anxiety due to stressful life events. People living with generalized anxiety disorder experience frequent anxiety for months, if not years. So this is kind of like a basal baseline, like constant anxiety, dread, feeling of dread. And I think the important part here as well is that it can interfere with your daily life. Like it prevents people from doing things, right? Like I said, like functioning. So symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder: feeling restless, being fatigued, having problems concentrating, you may be irritable, having headaches, muscle aches, stomach pains, back to the pains, right? Back to the unexplained pains that we don't know why someone is having them. Worrying a lot, that's huge. Like this kind of underlying worrying that something bad is going to happen, which of course would affect sleep. All right, and our next one is depression. Again, super common. I'm sure we have all seen someone, know someone experience depression. Signs and symptoms of depression. Oh yeah, and depression includes like major depression and persistent depressive disorder. There's a ton of different depressions, even seasonal affective disorder, where people get kind of down in the dumps and depressed like in the winter. It's just cyclical. You get depressed in the winter, and then when spring comes around, you're better, but the next winter you're depressed again. Depression covers all of these. So signs and symptoms occur most of the day, nearly every day for at least 2 weeks. This persistent sadness, feeling hopeless, being irritable, feeling guilt, worthlessness, or helplessness, loss of interest or pleasure in hobbies and activities, decreased energy, fatigue, or feeling slowed down, difficulty concentrating or remembering things, obviously having problems sleeping or waking up or oversleeping. It's like one end or the other. You can't sleep, or you're sleeping too much. Appetite problems, don't want to eat, there's sometimes thoughts of death or suicide attempts, and aches and pains yet again. And, I repeated that, sorry. And then, so let's see here. So out of all those symptoms, it depends, the severity depends on how many symptoms you have and how bad they are, right? Like, it has to be like most of the day, nearly every day for at least 2 weeks. And has to include the persistent low mood. That is the one that it has to include. So next is grief and loss. Grief and loss is a normal response to loss during or after a disaster or traumatic event. And like I said, with COVID, we can all relate. And it can happen to response to loss of life. I think that is the most common thing we think of. And I think less commonly, we don't think of the part about drastic changes to our daily routines and ways of life that usually bring us comfort and a feeling of stability. So what does that mean? Life changes. Let's say losing your job or getting a divorce, or you just got a diagnosis of some sort of chronic illness that may, that affects your life, like COPD is one, that would be a loss. So losing your independence, I think of like our elderly population where they lose their independence. So, and that's grief and loss as well. So common reactions to grief and loss: shock, disbelief or denial, anxiety, distress, anger, periods of sadness, and loss of sleep and loss of appetite. And these feelings tend to oscillate. It's not linear. They don't like just go down one. It's like, they'll go back and forth. Like, that's what I've noticed. So, and the last one I want to talk about is suicide. I think we all know what that is. So I just went on to talk about the warning signs. These are the warning signs that are about people being in immediate risk. So if you encounter someone that's talking about wanting to die or wanting to kill themselves, that they feel empty or hopelessness or having no reason to live, feeling trapped, there are no solutions. If they are in some sort of unbearable emotional, physical pain, if they talk about being a burden to others, that's actually pretty big. And if they're withdrawing from family or friends. More immediate risk factors here. If they're giving away their possessions, that's a huge red flag. If they're saying goodbye to family and friends, if they're putting their affairs in order, such as making a will, I mean, you know, within context, I mean, we all should have a will. If they're taking great risks that could lead to death, or if they're talking about death often. So those are like serious red flags here. There are other red flags here. There's serious warning signs as well. Mood swings, making a plan or looking for a way to kill themselves, talking about great guilt or shame, using alcohol or drugs more often, acting anxious or agitated, changing your eating or sleeping habits, or showing rage or talking about seeking revenge. So if you ever encounter someone with any of these, what do? So here, this is awesome. This is a graphic from the National Institute of Mental Health. This is the 5 action steps for helping someone in emotional pain. And it can be tough, especially in the moment where you're like, oh my gosh, you know, this person is in trouble. But the first step is ask, are you thinking about killing yourself? I think for a non-clinician, that is probably the hardest thing to do, is to open up that conversation. I mean, just because, you know, you're not like experienced in doing it and you're not doing it all the time or whatever, you know. And so, yeah, that's a big one. And then the next step is to keep them safe. So then you're looking around like means, right? Like, do they have access to things that they can harm themselves right now? So, and then you be there and you listen, acknowledge their feelings, and then help them connect. Really strongly urge, I mean, you can't force people to do things, of course, but strongly urge them to call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, the 988. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then if it's your friend or family, definitely stay connected, you know, like after the crisis, like let them know you're there, let them know that you're there to support them. Hey, somebody does care about you. So here are the resources that I was mentioning earlier. So obviously, if it's life-threatening, call 911 immediately. But for, let's say they're having a suicidal crisis or some sort of emotional distress, like they're having emotional breakdown, you can call the 988 hotline. It's for both suicide and non-suicide. So you just call or text 988 and there's somebody there to help. There is also a crisis text line, and there's a veterans crisis line for veterans, though I've been told that you can actually call the 988 and get the veterans line that way as well. So, and it's really cool. These are all 24 hours a day, free, it's confidential, and they provide crisis counseling and mental health referrals. So that's how you get referred to things in a pinch, you know. And then there's a line for emotional distress related to natural human caused disaster. I added this actually at the end because we just got through that hurricane and I was like, oh, hey, this might be helpful. So there's a disaster distress helpline as well. Now we're in hurricane season again. Some other resources. So SAMHSA, Behavioral Health Treatment Center, and that's yet again another federal program that helps. That's a mental health thing. They do mental health problems, but what's super cool about them is that they do mental health and substance use and addiction. And we all know that the opioid crisis in this country has gotten out of hand. So this is something really good and to have as a to help people out. It's confidential, it's anonymous. And earlier with the graphic I showed earlier about the National Alliance on Mental Illness, I really like that site because you can look on that site and you can look up their mental illnesses and read up on it and see what it is and what the symptoms are, and what the possible treatment plans could be. So it's pretty cool. Mental Health America is another one. And there's many advocacy groups, support groups. There's some even for specific mental health problems, like, let's say anxiety, because anxiety is so common. Like you could look up resources for anxiety, and it would come up with their organizations for that. And what I like about these is that all of these can help you in some way to find a mental health provider, and they can offer peer support groups, other resources. And those are my references. And that's it. All right. Okie dokie. Any questions?
All right. Yvette, thank you so much. That was just an excellent review, and much needed information for us to consider, for us to keep in mind with our families, our coworkers, and our clients. So thank you again. Are there any questions for Yvette while we have her for about 12 more minutes? Any questions about mental health or about a situation, that we could run across, or any thoughts?
Yeah, so I have one, and I'm going back to the graphic that you showed, which is, it was an eye opener, because the very first one said 1 in 5 people have something going on, and then 1 in 20, and then the 17%. So my question is, I'm thinking, if I'm in a room with 5 people, one of us has something, we're dealing with something or has something going on. So my question is this: is there a way that when we're interacting with people to determine or be able to tell if something is temporary or if it's possibly something ongoing? So, maybe someone could be dealing with just an isolated situation or something. Is there any way to tell that, or any signs we should look for consistency in some things? Is there any way to tell?
That's tricky. So there are signs and symptoms, but and I showed a lot of that in the slide. But the problem is there's nothing that tells us if it's going to be prolonged, I believe is your question. If it's just like, oh, this is going to be transient and it's only going to be okay for the next month, versus, oh, this is going to be a lifelong thing. No real way of knowing that except for time. So the way we do it in clinical terms is that, let's say anxiety. I love anxiety because it's so common, right? Like I showed you in the graphic. How do I know that this is just anxiety that is, oh my God, I'm about to have a wedding and I'm anxious about it, or I'm about to go through a divorce or something, like those, but maybe I'm still anxious after my wedding, or I'm still anxious after my divorce. I mean, don't know. So that's why a lot of the symptoms are about persistent and it happening over long periods of time. Okay. And no way of knowing except for knowing the person. So if it's like a family member or something, and you're like, man, so-and-so's been depressed for 6 months now, like that's how you know, versus kind of like, oh, I had a really bad week at work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Yvette while she's here with us? Well, I'll tell you, that was a lot of information, an excellent presentation. So I was hurriedly scribbling everything to try to get as many notes as I could, because, again, it's a topic that is, I believe, not discussed enough, and definitely doesn't get enough attention and consideration for us to even examine ourselves, let alone the people that we're surrounded with. And so to even start the discussion is, I believe, very important. And I do hope that that all of you all will take what you've learned and consider in all of your encounters. Tara, I see your hand.
It's more of a statement. I just want to thank you, Yvette. And secondly, I think it helps with our clients of now we know what to look for. And sometimes we're with our clients days, weeks, months, and we can notice a change in their behavior, and just to really pay attention to our coworkers and our clients and our family members, even that. But thank you very much. And I loved it. And it actually, it opened my eyes on a lot of things. So I thank you.
If I could just kind of piggyback off of what Tara said, she mentioned dealing with clients. And I know that can be challenging because it could be, they're heightened, sensitive because of it's a stressful thing, selling a home or purchasing one. So we get it. Can you offer us any, as agents, offer us any recommendations on how to de-escalate if, it's stressful, they got to sell, they're buying a house and, tensions are high and their feelings get up here. Is there any strategies that we can use to kind of de-escalate the situation, get them calmed down? Can you offer us any suggestions for that?
Yeah. So it's almost like conflict resolution.
Mhm.
I feel like, right? Like, both sides, it's intense and everybody's like, oh my gosh, what are we doing?
Mhm.
And so for de-escalation, I feel like a lot of times, sometimes just taking a deep breath for one. Sometimes you just need to walk away for a sec, not forever, but for a couple minutes, get a breath of fresh air. Let's come back to the table. All right. And that happens in meetings anyway, like amongst colleagues anyway, like, you're in a meeting and things are getting heated. And sometimes I'm just like, I need a moment. And, I'm just go outside, go to the bathroom, splash some water on my face. I don't know, just kind of breather. That's one big thing. I think it's very important actually, because that makes everybody a little bit calmer.
Mhm.
Other thing is reframing and putting in perspective. So that is also huge as well, because I think a lot of times when we are in something and we're really, both sides are so, it's almost like tunnel vision. We're like, okay, I got to sell this home, or I got to do this, or I got to whatever it is. We forget about everything outside of that.
Mhm.
Just looking at the bigger picture and being like, wait a minute. So what's the worst thing that would happen if I didn't sell this home in this next month?
Right.
I mean, I know you can't say that to a client, but like not that direct, but just being able to reframe that and be like, hey, so if this does not happen, I would pose it as an if. This does not happen, what do you think is going to happen? What is it that's making them so ramped up about it? That would be my first. What are you so scared of? Like, it's a hard question. It's an easy question to ask and a hard question to answer when you're receiving that question.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because sometimes just putting it out there like that makes the person stop and reflect and go, wait, what am I so worried about? What am I so anxious about?
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's huge, because that brings people back down to earth and be like, okay, it's okay if I don't sell this house in the next 24 hours. Like, yeah. Or it's okay if I don't buy a house in the next 24 hours, I guess lately it's been.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, what are you afraid is going to happen? I think it's a great open-ended question.
Right. I like it. That was good.
Yeah.
That was, we can add that to our conflict resolution policy and procedures.
And it's true in life in general, if you think about it, like, what are we afraid of? What are you afraid of? I always ask myself that. Why am I so worried about this? If I'm worried about something, what am I afraid is going to happen? What is that doom and gloom, as I call it?
Right. Very good. That is very good. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry I flew through that very quickly. I know that there was like not a whole lot of time and I wanted to like cram in so much, But if you guys want a copy of the slides, I'm happy to provide them.
Sure.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, so you can review at your leisure.
That would be terrific.
Thank you so much. That would definitely be a useful resource, and we could definitely share that with all of the agents in our market center.
Exactly.
So again, Yvette, we can't thank you enough. You were wonderful, and we're just so grateful that you came to share your expertise and your knowledge with us. And thank you again.
Perfect.
So, yes.
Thanks,
your
guys.
Yvette, is your contact information on there in case, someone does need some assistance or help?
Oh, no, but I can add it to the last slide, my question slide. I can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, everyone. And so, well, that will conclude the subject matter for today. And I actually just have one final announcement to share with you all. Some of you've heard already, and some of you might just be hearing it for the first time, but this was my last Glad You Asked, because I'm going to be moving on to a new opportunity. Really excited. I'll be with the Real Estate Commission. So after next week, I'm going to be moving on to a new role, a new position. And so I will still be a great resource for you guys, just from a different place. So I'll be joining the North Carolina Real Estate Commission as their new consumer resource officer. And so I just wanted to tell you all and just thank you guys for hanging with us and for being here every 2 weeks and educating and learning. And I hope that you'll continue to be learning based and that you will continue to plug in to all the resources that Teresa's going to keep having available for you all. But just wanted to say thank you. I'll miss you guys, and bye-bye.
We're going to miss you, Tiffany, but we're so happy. I'm so thrilled for you. This is huge. So, girl, you know how I feel, but so happy for you. Very happy for you. Thanks, everybody. We're so glad you asked. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.